This is a story of an American-made crisis. Not a war, not a natural disaster, but decisions made in Washington, D.C. that allowed people to die of preventable diseases and starvation. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has insisted that
no one has died because the United States has cut aid. No.
He's asserted that life-saving operations were spared. ProPublica found that those claims were a charade. I'm Brett Murphy.
I'm Anna Berry Jester. In August, we went to East Africa, to Kenya and South Sudan to try and understand what the impacts of the cuts to USAID were. USAID was the largest humanitarian organization in the world. It was started in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy.
The agency was built more than anything for emergency response. So when there's an epidemic or a natural disaster, that's where USAID was supposed to step up. When Trump was inaugurated, they said they were going to do something like a review of foreign aid programs. But what they were really doing was slowly and methodically cutting all of those programs. It was not this amorphous they or the administration that was doing this. There were political appointees who had been brought in to lead this agency who were destroying it from the inside out.
People expressed that they were afraid they'd lose their jobs if they tried to save programs that they knew to be life-saving. Sources told us about this one day. They went up to the 9th floor and they walked by a conference room where all the political appointees were gathered, giving congratulatory speeches and sharing a sheet cake to celebrate everything they'd done to dismantle the agency in 1 month. In Kenya, they had cut food aid to one of the largest refugee camps in the world. There's over 300,000 people who live there. And then in South Sudan, they were in the middle of an enormous cholera outbreak.
So we wanted to go and see what the situation looked like on the ground.
On paper, it looked like all these programs that USAID was running were active, but what we found when we went there was that they were not.
Right when we landed in Kenya, the thing that we couldn't not notice as soon as you're there is how hungry everyone is.
People had not received any food for, I think, a month or two, and they were really desperate. They were really hungry.
Pregnant women who were eating mud for calories. A 20-year-old mother told us that she was actually considering suicide because she heard that the UN takes care of kids without parents.
Normally, the World Food Program provides food monthly, and for a long time, they've been given rations that would be considered, a normal day's calories. Since the USAID cuts, they've been providing just a fraction of what they were supposed to get.
People inside of Kakuma, which is supposed to be one of the more stable and reliable refugee camps in Africa, they were leaving to flee back to the places where they had left for violence.
They told us they'd rather die from violence than hunger.
I spent most of my time with this one woman named Rose. I met her at first in the malnutrition ward. Her kid, Santo, was one of the sickest looking kids there. He was so malnourished. His skin had lost pigmentation, it was kind of peeling off. But she had wanted to leave because her other 2 sons were at home. And this is actually the situation that a lot of the mothers we found in the clinic were in. They had one incredibly sick kid who was almost dying in the hospital, while other kids at home who they could not look after for themselves, they didn't have food either. The U.S. has since released some funds that will allow workers to distribute food through at least March, but rations will still be drastically reduced. When we got there, South Sudan was in the middle of the worst cholera outbreak in the country's history. Been to, I don't think there's any other place probably on earth like it. It's a refugee camp of about 180,000 people, completely surrounded by floodwater, and the only reason it can exist, and it's not flooded out itself, is that there's a bunch of pumps operated by the United Nations and levees.
It is surrounded by water and only exists as dry land for the efforts of humanitarian organizations. Right when they were starting to get the cholera outbreak under control, all these programs got cut and stopped functioning that ran cholera clinics, that provided clean water and sanitation.
We are living in a 100% war situation.
This is just the first part.
And when they closed, what had been a 5-minute walk to an IV bag became like an 8-hour canoe ride. And this is cholera. It is not an expensive or complicated thing to prevent or to treat. It's about sanitation and IV bags. 62 cents can be the difference between life and death. People were dying at home, people were dying en route to a hospital or to a clinic. We met families who had a loved one who died walking, who died in a canoe, and they just got buried in their backyard.
One of the things we learned is that people who died from cholera were only counted if they died in a health clinic. So the numbers are just a dramatic undercount.
The United Nations Migration Program has not received a new South Sudan grant. They expect to run out of funding in Bend 2 for infrastructure maintenance come February, after months of some of the most severe flooding in years.
We don't have unlimited resources. We never have and we never will. And even though we spend more than anybody else, these resources have to be tailored as part of a broader strategy. And frankly, they have to have some return on the United States as well.
South Sudan has a GDP 1/10 the size of Vermont, so they don't have a lot that they can give in way of natural resources or anything else. So the places that need it the most have a very uncertain future in this transactional world of foreign assistance. The people we met with, these were not lost causes. These were not people who were going to die anyway, or that were already infirm or sick or helpless. These were three-dimensional people with futures. They wanted to come to the US, they wanted to emigrate to another country. They had plans for their families, for themselves. Millions of people were immediately and irreparably harmed by what happened here.